Hello, everyone. This is Guts and Glory. I'm Summer Bach, and today we have an amazing guest. Oh, wait. Before I introduce you, how do you say your last name? Malterre?
Malterre.
Malterre. Maybe we'll just include that. Tom Malterre is an advanced functional medicine practitioner with over 10 years of clinical experience. He has 2 degrees in nutritional sciences from Bastyr University and is a faculty member of the Autism Research Institute. Tom is a co-author of 3 books, including his new book, The Elimination Diet book, that will be released on March 31st. But you know what? I have this one too. Whole Life Nutrition by Tom Malterre. I've got a little sign. This one's autographed, actually. Boom! Anyway, yeah. Well, you know what I love about you, Tom? By the way, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Summer. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you. What I really love about you is that you are so passionate not only about helping people feel amazing and heal their bodies, but you really are out there. You go out in the wild, you harvest plants with your 5 children, and you're passionate about being a dad. And apparently you let them just drink from streams in Northwest Washington as well.
Well, if it depends on the stream. I mean, we bring filters, but it's glacial fed up here, Summer. It's absolutely gorgeous. And one of the reasons I do what I do is to not only preserve what's going on for my clients, but to preserve what's going on for the next generation, because I do love my kids so much, right? I mean, I have 5 of them. And after you have a couple kids, you realize this life is not yours. You're here to serve others. And so, I want to preserve whatever we have, whether it's clean air, food, water, soil, microbiome, for the next generation as well.
Well, we also have a few things in common. We were in the Origins movie together, which
Yay!
Was awesome. And that's when we met. We met over at Pedram's house while
right.
you were getting filmed for that movie. And it was just such a hilarious coincidence because I was like, wait a minute. I know your mom.
I know, right?
That was
world
bizarre.
Is so small. I know.
She's been wanting to meet you, or wanting me to meet you since I first met her. She's like, you have to meet my son. And talked about you, told me everything about you. And then there's this guy, I'm like, he's fascinating. And she was right. Let's just put it that way. She was exactly right.
How fun.
It's so fun. Well, I want to hear a lot more about your book today, mostly because I've been in this world for a while, and something I've noticed is that people come to me a lot trying to figure out what their health concerns are. They have a lot of questions about what kinds of food sensitivities they have, how do they figure it out, what kind of tests do they take, and I think it can be overwhelming for people, especially when they're hearing more and more about all of these allergens like gluten and stuff. So I just want to kind of hear from you, what do people do with this whole concept of an elimination diet?
Absolutely. Well, the interesting thing is I stumbled across this myself, right? I was actually not trying to find it, but I had some severe issues. I had joint problems. I had mood issues. I had fatigue. I had this foggy thinking where I'd eat some foods and I never associated it with the foods, but then I would want to sit on the couch for hours. I'd want to click on the VHS. I'm going to age myself right now and turn on, like Mary Poppins and watch it 22 times. Not because it was such a great movie, but because I didn't want to get my buns off the couch, right? I was just so fatigued all the time. And then I'd have this, stomach upset, all sorts of different symptoms that I couldn't explain. And then I went on this, while I was at Bastyr University, this 2-week raw food diet, interestingly enough. And we took out all grains, and we took out, a lot of different foods, no dairy, no eggs. And next thing you know, all these symptoms just disappeared. I wasn't even thinking that I had a problem. I didn't even think it was abnormal to have erratic bowel movements. I didn't think it was abnormal to have occasional joint pain and terrible fatigue and this weird fog that kind of comes over your mind, where you really can't think sharp at all. I didn't think that was weird. I thought that was normal. But then when I took those foods out for a while, all of a sudden, you jump up to this next level. All of a sudden, you just the fog clears and you have this mental acuity and you're able to put these pieces together and feel these feelings you hadn't had in forever, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is the best drug on the planet. Why aren't we sharing this with everybody, right? So then the next thing I do is I take a whole wheat chapati and I have one of my favorite burritos in this whole wheat chapati and all the symptoms come back. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have this gluten sensitivity. So since then I found other things and, I modify these things and I started recommending them to people in clinic. And I said, hey, let's try this for your rheumatoid arthritis and see what happens. And rheumatoid arthritis of 31 years just disappears. Hey, let's try this for your chronic migraines and see what happens. Within 3 days, the migraines start dissipating. Within 9, they're gone. The skin disorders, the mood disorders, the anxiety, depression, bipolar, you name it. Everything was responding well to these food sensitivity diets. And I was like, this is crazy. What is this? So how do we communicate that to the rest of the world? How do we tell them, like, there is another level and that you may want to seek out and determine which foods are best for you and which foods are not serving you, which foods are giving you the symptoms and which foods are not. So this whole program, this whole diet, this whole book is all about how do you eliminate your symptoms and find the foods that rock for you. That's what this is all about. People fear it. They're like, I don't want to take out gluten. I don't want to take out dairy. What would I do without my grilled cheese sandwich or my macaroni and cheese or my nachos and my whatever it is? Everybody has their vices. Everybody has their cravings. Everybody has these things that they're incredibly attached to. And I'm like, well, that's cool. You can keep eating those things. That's great. But expect your migraines to continue. Expect that chronic sinus infection that you have by consuming all that dairy. Expect that joint pain because those foods may be bringing you those symptoms. Those things you call comfort foods may not be so comfortable for you. And really, you'll never know. You'll never know if you could feel like incredible unless you just pull those out for a short period of time. So this is not a diet, Summer. This is not something that you go on and you stay on for the rest of your life. This is a tool. This is a functional medicine analysis tool. This is something you do for a period of time to kind of find out, what is it? Where is my stuff coming from? Where are my migraines coming from? Where is my joint pain coming from? Where is my depression coming from? Because the first suspect for anything that's happening in your life is going to be through your gut. You know this. Looking through your gut. Functional medicine is always like, look to the gut first. Do the 4R program. Remove, replace, reinoculate, repair. Remove the irritants. You have 25 plus tons of matter that's going to come through your mouth through your lifetime. That's a lot. And in that protein that's coming through your mouth, you can recognize some of those as being harmful. Your immune system might be confused. And we should probably talk about why that's happening more now than ever, but I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah.
So your immune system gets confused, right? And it starts attacking these proteins in your foods. And next thing you know, you feel like you're under attack. Much like you'd feel like you're under attack from a virus or a cold, right? You have that joint pain. You have that foggy thinking. You have that fatigue. You have that, I want to curl up on a couch and not really face life. So, come on. We can find these foods. You can use these tools. You can take out the prime suspect foods that I've seen with thousands of clients over the last 10 years. You can take these foods out, and then your energy level increases and your mental acuity sharpens. And all of a sudden you can say, this is awesome. And then you add back in foods one by one, and you see if those symptoms come back. And when those symptoms come back, you have power. You now know. What are the triggers for your condition? You now know you can take it in your own hands. You can stop whatever it is. You can eliminate your symptoms by finding the foods that rock for you. It's awesome. It's a really great tool.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've done it myself, and when I had that experience, it was very similar. It was like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could possibly feel this good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It is pretty cool. So, yeah, this experience happened to me as well. And what I found through this is what I call my superpower foods and my kryptonite foods. And I think it's really important. You need to look at what foods you shouldn't be eating. And I think people get so attached almost emotionally, but I think it's also socially and like tribally to their food, because it means if you had to stop eating grilled cheese, then you might not be connected to like Grandma Jane anymore, who used to make this for you. And I think that's really relevant to recognize, is that like part of our culture, such a deeply embedded part of our culture, is the way that we share food together. And I think that's the biggest threat that people face when entering into an elimination diet. And I think that's the only thing I just want to say really quickly is like, on the other side of that is feeling amazing, is that you get to learn that your connections get to be deeper than just sharing food with someone.
Oh man. Oh yeah. And it's interesting you chose that, Summer, because I want to also identify with people. It's not always your fault. So let me give you an example. You had mentioned what? You had mentioned cheese, right? There's no accident there. Because when people go on the elimination diet, the biggest vice they have, it's not the sugar, it's not the coffee, it's the cheese. And the reason it's the cheese is interesting, right? You know me, I'm a mechanism guy. I'm into biochemistry. That's my deal, right? So I look up all the things. I'm like, what are the compounds in cheese? Why is this happening with people? And I'm also a dad. So I witnessed it firsthand. What happens when you have a baby you're an auntie now, you know. What happens when you have a baby and the baby's crying a lot? What does the mom do to calm the child down?
Often feeds it.
Breastfeeds it, yep. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it feeds the child, and all of a sudden, eyes roll back. It's totally sedated. It's calmed down. It nestles into mom. And, sure, a lot of that's the contact, the physical contact. But mechanism, man, I looked at the actual constituents of dairy. And I found that there are specific opioid-like proteins, specific proteins that bind to drug-like, morphine-like receptors in your body that make you sedated and addicted when you consume those foods. Sedated, calmed, addicted, you have to come back for more. You think about that. You dream about that. Do you know how you can concentrate that? I mean, it's wise. Mother Nature does that. Why? So if you were a wild animal out in the woods, right? A colt in Montana, for example, and you're running wild in the woods, and all of a sudden a wolf's going to come get you, right? The colt's going to be close to mom, and it's going to want to feed more, so it gathers more strength and size to protect itself from the predators, right? So you want to sedate, you want to be addicted, you want to come back and feed frequently, right? Makes sense. But what happens when you take all the extra liquid out, some of the extra fat out, and you concentrate it into this block of orange goodness called cheddar cheese? You know what I'm saying? It's like all of a sudden you have this addictive compound, like in hundreds of times bigger concentration, and we're just consuming it all the time. And that's why you hear when Oprah or Kim Kardashian go on these elimination diets, they're like, all I thought about was cheese all the time. It's cheese, it's cheese. I've had people get sweats and shakes and go through withdrawal over cheese. It's the most bizarre thing.
That's amazing. We call it milk drunk. It's
nice.
A wonderful thing. It is a wonderful little face. It's like,
oh yeah.
And she just looks like everything's fine.
Heat up that milk right before bedtime. Make sure those things get well absorbed. You're gone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So when people are coming to me, they're often asking me, is there an easier way? Like, is there an easier way than having to go through, we'll talk later about how long this takes and all of that. But like, well, some people don't want to do the work of having to eliminate the food. Can't they just take a shortcut?
Oh, I would love that. Oh my gosh, would I love that. So that'd be so great. And I used to believe that was the truth. I used to believe you could do a lab analysis. I used to believe you could do, IgG, IgE protocols, the outcats. There's so many different tests out there that people can look at, elite profiles, and they really do find some neat things. I'm not saying those labs don't work at all. But what I'm going to say is when somebody gets a lab, and they see a specific number of reaction, right? I have a mild or moderate or severe reaction to a particular food. Number one, they assume that's law, and they say, this has got to be right. I don't react to this food. I do react to this food and whatever. But they don't know what the symptoms are when they react. So they don't know that their sinus congestion is associated with the dairy. They don't know that their rashes are associated with the egg. They don't know that the corn and soy might be drawing in the fatigue. That's one problem. So they don't know. So if they get cross-contaminated somewhere, they go out to eat somewhere and somebody accidentally put some gluten or they put some dairy in their food, they don't know that the symptoms they just had were from that food. They just know they feel bad. So that's dangerous. You really want to know what's causing what. And that's a really, really powerful position to be in. The other problem I found, Summer, and I have to be honest with you, is that, I got approached by some of these labs to work with them because I'm such a brainiac and all this crazy molecular stuff. And they said, hey, why don't you work with us? And at the time, one of these labs was finding everybody was positive to asparagus. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm looking through the literature and thousands of research articles on food sensitivities. I don't see a lot of people reacting to asparagus in the general population. How come your lab is showing people reacting to asparagus? So they did some analysis and they said, We have the wrong antigen. We made a mistake. And I was like, whoa, okay. So your test is looking for one specific protein that may or may not be the protein that people are reacting to. And when they see that positive on their panel, it could be false. It could be a false positive, could be a false negative. You could be looking for the wrong protein. I mean, in Europe, when they're looking at dairy sensitivities, they'll do sub-fractions of casein, sub-fractions of whey. They'll look at 8 different markers or whatnot. Here in the US, we'll look at 2. And it turns out there are more proteins than we ever thought possible that people could be reacting to. So the tests are not definitive. The worst thing for me is when people come in and say, well, I know I don't react to gluten. Look, there's nothing on this IgG panel, right? And it turns out we get them tested and they're a celiac. So it's like, I love labs. I love them. And sometimes they find stuff that the elimination diet won't find for one reason or another. But I would say the gold standard, the most valuable tool I've seen for people finding out what makes them feel fabulous is the elimination diet.
Yeah, I've heard this from so many doctors, and there are that it's the handful of doctors that are in functional medicine that are saying this,
Right.
But it's really profound to me. And I mean, maybe this is a good opportunity. Can we just hear a little bit about your brainiac abilities? I mean, so tell me a little bit. Like, you've been in functional medicine, I know, for 10 years.
Yeah.
And there's more. Like, you're educated in advanced functional medicine. Can you explain a little bit about that? I don't know what that means exactly, and I want to know, because I just think that you're brilliant. You always bring so much context to what we're out here talking about. Like, for me as an herbalist, I'm talking about this information. I know it to be true from an instinctual level, from an experiential level, but I don't always have that science component to back it up, and then you just fill in the blanks for me, and then I'm like, yeah, told you so.
Well, here's my thing, Summer. The interesting piece is I started out in herbal medicine just like you did. Mm-hmm. So I was actually doing just an apprenticeship. I wasn't in official schooling with a herbalist locally. She was married to a Native American. And we took off into the woods. So I did this 6-week thing, and I harvested a bunch of wild roots, fruits, and shoots, ate a bunch, made medicines, teas, tinctures, salves, poultices, you name it. And I felt fabulous. I mean, absolutely fabulous. Like, through the core, strength, it was awesome. And so I went out and I started telling everybody, oh my gosh, the Native Americans knew what was going on. Like, if ever you have irritable bowel symptoms, why aren't you like shaving off some Oregon grape and getting some of those berberine alkaloids? And hey, did you notice when bears have blood sugar issues, they go dig up the root of the Oplopanax? Yeah, my buddy was tracking one. He saw this happen, and all of a sudden its fur came better. And, Devil's Club, right?
It's my favorite herb.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. My wife and I, our first date was actually harvesting Devil's Club. So, it's like, oh my gosh, right? This stuff is amazing. It's amazing. So I go to my friends who are conventional medical practitioners, and I said, why don't you guys use these natural medicines? And they're like, there's no science for that. There's no science for that. And at the time, I noticed some things with dairy in me and some eggs and stuff, and I said, I think I have these reactions. Oh, there's no science in that. There's no science. So I was like, all right, dude, here we go, right? So I dove into journals. I dove in, and I was like, I'm going to talk to them in the language that they know. So yeah, I have the 2 science degrees from Vassar University, but I'm constantly seeking, right? Constantly seeking. So I got hired on at Thorne Research, part of the medical affairs team, and they had me as the functional medicine liaison. So when I say advanced functional medicine practitioner, it means I've been through 7, maybe 8 now of the applied functional medicine and clinical practice week-long trainings. I've been through 5 of the digestion modules, 5 of the detox modules, like all their advanced training modules. Because I was a liaison, because I had to be at all the conferences so I could learn the information and talk to the doctors about it, I have a lot more training than the average bear in this particular arena. So, there's that. And I'm really curious about kids' health. I love my kids, right? I'm really curious about the future. So somehow I got drafted into the Autism Research Institute, and they were having me for a while doing all their lectures at DAN, not all of them, but, I would show up to DAN conferences, and they don't do the DAN stuff, they do online stuff, so we do stuff online. But we're on these chat groups all the time. We just had this correspondence last night that was fascinating. And we're on these chat groups all the time. So now I process information from Finland and Germany, and where all these people are sending these little notifications, and then I pull all the research articles, and I try and put all the pieces together. So the reason I have a broad scope is I want to know why we're all so sick, Summer.
Yeah.
Like, I can't see somebody in my clinical practice. I can't without falling in love with them. Oh my gosh, this morning I had this 92-year-old gentleman. Oh my God, I'm trying not to cry. He is amazing. He came in on oxygen. He came in on a walker, right? And he's eating, creamed wheat in the cafeteria at his senior home. He's having, cake, lemon cream pies and all this stuff. He's eating this terrible food, and he's literally wilting away in front of me. I mean, he used to be 135 pounds. He's about less than 90 pounds now, and he can barely breathe. He can barely walk. Okay, it takes him 5 minutes sitting in a chair to actually catch his breath. All I did was some simple dietary changes, simple supplement changes. He comes in my office today with no walker, no cane, like shakes my hand like a young man, and I'm just like, man, this is why I do this. This is why I do this. I mean, it's awesome. I don't think people need to suffer. The reason I dive into the science so much is because there are so many people out there that are falling apart, and they really don't need to fall apart. That's why we wrote the book. That's why we do what we do. That's why I geek out on the science. So when doctors come to me and say, well, my client should be on statins for their heart issues, and I say, and your client's mitochondrial function is so bad they're on oxygen, you can't be on that medication. Let me show you this stack of 27 specific articles from conventional medical journals that will prove my point. So that's the only reason I geek out, really, is so I can help people.
You are a secret weapon, in other words. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story too. Because imagine what happens when young people who have a whole life ahead of them are able to do that. Like the way that you could age maybe more slowly and gracefully with all of this information. I think it's really amazing. Yeah. So I have a couple of questions about this whole concept of the elimination diet itself, and we talk a lot about fermented foods, and when I look at how elimination diets normally go, could you give us just like the quick, literally like 30-second drive-by of what an elimination diet is, so that we can talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay. Here's the general overview as most people will understand it. Elimination diet is actually the removal of suspect foods that have been proven in scientific literature and in my clinical setting to cause irritation in the majority of people. You take those out for a period of time, minimum of 2 weeks, and then you slowly add back in foods that may be reactive, but I start with the less reactive foods first, and then I move out to the big dogs like gluten and dairy later. So this period of reintroduction usually takes place of foods eaten for 3 days, 72 hours, and then if you have no reactions, then you add in a different food. No reactions, add in a different food. If you have a reaction, you immediately take that food back out of your diet and you leave it out for a minimum of 3 months. So you take that out, boom, gone. It's gone. So if I ate a little bit of corn, all of a sudden that rash on my right cheek showed up, and I'd be like, oh, sorry, that's it. The problem is there are nuances, right? There are nuances. So many people are familiar with feeling bad that when they feel great and they add back in a food and they come back to that bad state, they don't always, get it right away. They don't always get, it was the food, dude. It was the food, right? So I say, don't bang your head against the wall. When in doubt, leave it out. Just take that out for a while, right? Move on to the next food. Once those symptoms, the rash starts going back down again, then start back in on the food. So that's it. That's it. Now, in the meantime, of course, because I have a wife that's an amazing whole foods cook, right? You're eating phenomenal foods. You're eating stuff like, we just had this turkey hash the other day that was sweet potatoes and turkey and whatnot with sage, fresh sage. Oh my gosh, it was so mouth-watering. We have this slow-cooked chicken tacos that we make. You can, if you're doing the grain version that has a little bit of rice flour, it's sprouted rice flour, organic sprouted rice flour, less arsenic, better digestion. Then, you can wrap these tortillas into this slow-cooked either tart cherry or pomegranate chicken. Come on. And then you wrap it up, right? And then you can put on your fresh greens or your avocado, whatever. You don't suffer. You don't suffer at all, okay? And boom, your energy increases because of the improved nutrition as well as the lack of irritants, because really, that's what we're finding. We've got people like Sid Baker at the Autism Research Institute. That guy's like a walking encyclopedia of knowledge, one of the founders of functional medicine. And I love how the very mature doctors explain things so simply. He says, look, disease, I don't care what you're talking about. I don't care skin, autism, heart disease, whatever you're talking about, disease is caused by getting too much of things you don't need and too little of things you do need. So you have too many irritants, call them stress, call them toxins, call them bad food choices. And you don't have enough nutrients, call that love, call that clean foods, call that probiotics, beneficial microbiome. And then that balance gets skewed, right? And then all of a sudden, you sink into a state of disease. So anything you can do to pull that balance board back into neutral will get you back towards health. And the elimination diet does that. It gets rid of the irritants, the food sensitivity irritants. It gets rid of some of the toxic foods you're consuming and adds back in a lot of the nutrient-dense foods. So, of course, you're going to find more people than not get better from, you name a disease. I've seen MS, I've seen lupus, I've seen arthritis, I've seen skin conditions, you name it. No wonder they get better, right? It just makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I love that definition. And I've done this elimination diet, like I said, I've done it before, and there were very specific guidelines, and fermented foods were definitely not on it. So can you speak a little bit about like yours and fermented foods and how that works? Do you have fermented foods on your elimination diet?
Absolutely. And that's such a great question because we do remove baker's yeast, brewer's yeast, and the yeast found in fermented vegetables may or may not react in some people, but clinically what I've found over the years is the benefit to risk or cause ratio on the fermented foods is far outweighed on the benefit side. So we do leave in fermented foods. Absolutely. We promote fermented foods. Can I give you another case study real fast?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I had this guy, right? And he has this surgery. He has this for hernia. Okay. It's a hernia surgery. And he gets infected after the surgery. So he gets round and round after antibiotics, right? Next thing you know, his gut's just racked. For months, it's racked. He has no help solution whatsoever. He does nothing but add in sauerkraut. Okay, he just eats sauerkraut at every meal. Okay, 2 weeks later, after he's tried, you name the therapy and you name the new round of antibiotics, nothing's helping him. GI docs can't touch him. 2 weeks, sauerkraut, done, back to normal. So the power of fermented foods is so phenomenal. I mean, who am I talking to? The fermentationists, right? But really, I can't talk enough about the benefit of balancing out the intestinal tract. In fact, Summer, in this book, I hypothesize that one of the prime reasons we're having a quadrupling of celiac disease, one of the prime reasons we're having a doubling of peanut allergies, one of the reasons so many people are reacting to gluten, dairy, eggs, yeast, corn, soy, whatever it is they're reacting to, is because their microbiome was shifted at some point in their life, whether it was at birth, which is extremely detrimental, or sometime later on with antibiotics. And now their immune system doesn't know how to communicate with the outside world. Because people forget, Summer, that the immune system is the microbial interaction system. It is our sixth sense. Yes, we can see, smell, taste, hear, touch, but we also sense microbial existence in our environment through our immune cells. That's why they're there. They're there to look for viruses and bacterium and fungi and parasites. That's why we have an immune system. So if you remove some of the things that the immune system is trained to interact with, it will misbehave. It will no longer have its constant communication, and it will start attacking other things like pet dander, like pollen, like gluten, like dairy, like egg albumin, like whey, whatever it's going to respond to. So it's amazing, right? How important these little existent microbes have been for us since the beginning of time, really.
So in the second half of your book, you do talk a lot more about why, and that's one of the big reasons you think why this is happening, which it's so interesting to me. I mean, the work that I do all started from my own health crisis. I was to the point where I had multiple chemical sensitivity. I was getting panic attacks 3 to 5 times a week. I was allergic to my cat, and I'd had cats my whole life, and I was allergic to, I could eat about 20 to 30 foods without reacting, and that's it. And I was sick.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor and she's like, "You're healthy.
Oh, you look
I
great.
was
Your
like,
labs are normal. They're all within
awesome.
range.
Yeah, that was
I see that all the
disturbing
time.
to say
Yeah.
the least, And I think what was just really important about all of that for me is just, making the decision to heal. Like that was where it started. Was like, I'm going to heal. I was born into this world.
Yeah.
I should not be allergic to the world I was born in. Like
No.
that doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
something's got to be wrong here, and I'm
Yeah.
going to figure out how to fix it. So that was my big, decision when the pollen was like yellow drifts through the air, and I was like puffing up just looking at it, and I was just like, I should not be allergic to this. This is my world. So I want more and more people to get to that place where they can make a strong decision and come to the place of conviction within themselves that they can heal their body. But what I am most blown away by is the fact that this work has led to just all this stuff that's getting uncovered around the gut microbiome, around the microbiota that live in your body. And not only are they helping you digest your food, but like you said, which is such a beautiful way to say it, that they are the communication system with the environment around us.
Yeah.
That is, my mind is blown.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing is, it's not just us. I mean, every species does this. They actually reserve their resources, a level of their resources to feed microbes all over the place. So I was just talking to a plant pathologist, right? Dr. Robert Kramer, brilliant guy, used to work for the USDA. And he was saying up to 50% of the carbohydrates produced in plants. Okay, so gathering sunlight in the leaves, the photosynthetic process, right? You get the water, you get the CO2, and then you gather in the elements that facilitate the reaction. And next thing you end up with this CHO, this carbohydrate, right? They spend a lot of their time and energy producing a fuel called carbohydrate. Everybody assumes they're using it for their own energy. But no, up to 50% or more of that actually goes down to the root system. And they share those carbohydrates with nearby bacterium. And they actually encourage those bacterium to flourish around their root system so it can protect them from some of the pathogenic organisms in the soil. So it can actually form these little root nodules that allow the plants to absorb the minerals. It will attract specific species that make those minerals in a bioavailable form for the plant to attach to the root nodule. I mean, it's this synergistic, you saw Avatar, right?
Yes.
Okay. You know how it's like those root systems, they communicate throughout everything? That's exactly what's going on. And it all happens through the microbes. I mean, they're at 30,000 feet in the air. They're 2,000 feet deep in the ocean floor. I mean, they are everywhere, and we constantly communicate with them. And the more that we're learning in the science that you're talking about, we communicate with them in a very, very peaceful manner. It's not this germ theory, it's all going to get us type situation at all. It's more like, hey, let's communicate. Let's talk to each other. You do something for me. I do something for you. All life is good. It's
Here's
really
some food.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, have some food,
like,
by the way. Yeah, hang out a little bit. Yeah.
That's really fascinating. What are some of these other causes, though, of this issue? These big world issues. I mean, it's clearly increasing. Peanut allergies, autism, all of these issues.
Absolutely. So, I was just giving a talk to some physicians on endocrine disrupting chemicals. So basically, certain types of plasticizing agents. I was focusing on two. One was called bisphenol A, and the other one's called phthalates. And I was trying to let them know that the drastic rise in obesity and type 2 diabetes that we're seeing right now, and now an article just came out about autism as well, may be associated with these pseudo-estrogen, which is called xenoestrogens, these false hormone-like compounds that we're seeing in the environment. And one of the things I noticed when I was doing research for the book, which, thankfully didn't make it in because it's really complex, but I gave a simplified version, is that when you have certain chemicals in utero, when you're developing your immune cells, when you're forming the actual cell structure, you can actually start out life a little less tolerant, meaning you're more likely to see things as an immune cell, and instead of responding to them as being like, oh, it's all cool, I see these beneficial compounds, I see, foods, I see whatever, I'm not going to respond to those. The cells that come out of a system that's already been exposed to some chemicals will be more responsive. They'll be less tolerant. So just like, for example, I'll give you a kid example, right? Because I love my kids. My kids, if you come home, right, and you're like, oh, buddy, and you give them lots of love, and you're like, let me give you something to drink, and let me give you something to eat, and hey, let me give you some attention, right? They're chill. They're so great, right? But let's say you rush home and you're like, oh my gosh, I got a deadline, I got to write this paper, la, 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 and you're like, hey, good to see you, love you, I got to get going, right? And then you're not paying attention, they're thirsty, they're hungry, man, they are not tolerant, right? They're loud, they're obnoxious, they're, fighting with each other, whatever. I'm exaggerating, my kids are great. But, I'm just giving you an example. It's the same kind of thing, right? If you don't really give the nourishment, if you don't really give the proper developmental environment for cells, they can misbehave. And that's what we're seeing is a lot of these chemicals are leading to more allergies. Oh my gosh, I saw another article. Basically, you can drastically increase food sensitivities in somebody by giving them the hand sanitizer triclosan. And it turns out that triclosan itself, of course, knocks out the beneficial microbes, but it also seems to modulate immune cell function directly. So there are a lot of different things that I'm seeing. We can't mess around with this stuff. I mean, we're up to 16 billion pounds of BPA being produced every year. If you look at some of the industry sites, they'll brag about to the stockholders, hey, we just increased 750 million pounds of this production from 2012 to 2013. And you're like, wait, 750 million pounds of production in 1 year? So people are like wondering, they're like, how is it that we have this drastic rise? How is it that all of a sudden we have, a 28+% increase in autism in a 2-year time period? How is it that all of a sudden these juvenile cancer rates are going through the roof? How is it all of a sudden that everybody that you know has some sort of irritable bowel? How is it that somebody that you would think would be resilient to everything in life is crumbling in front of you with Alzheimer's or mental disorders? And you say, something's wrong. And I say, well, just go back. Go back to what makes someone right. What makes someone right is clean air, clean water, love, nourishing, nutrient-dense food, and exposure to beneficial microbes. That's what makes somebody healthy. Start throwing in a bunch of synthetic compounds, life gets confusing. Our immune cells are literally confused. And unfortunately, Summer, as you know, many of the compounds that we're spewing out, now this is from data published in American Academy of Pediatrics, okay? We're up to 74 billion pounds of chemicals being imported or produced in the U.S. every single day. 74 billion pounds every single day. 250 pounds per person per day. Those are conservative numbers. They don't include pesticides. They don't include pharmaceuticals. They don't include food additives, right? So we're swimming in this stuff. And if you look at the stockholder share stuff on chemicals, they're going through the roof. So is the production of these chemicals. That's 2010 conservative data. So you have to say, at what point are our bodies, are our cells going to go, I have to react to this. I have to react. It's at a particular concentration that I can no longer ignore. I can't detoxify it. I can't metabolize it. I'm going to have to react. I'm going to have to adapt to what I'm exposed to. So what I like to tell my doctors that I teach, I say, hey, what you are seeing in clinical practice, these drastic rises in disorders and diseases, this is not an accident. This is an adaptation. So that really sinks at home, and then they say, so you mean as part of my recommendations to my patients, then I would have to be telling them, watch your scented products. Watch cooking in plastics, freezing in plastics, saran wraps. Watch whether or not somebody's actually going to have pesticides in their house. There's so much data on people having pesticides in their house and using it on ants, on rats, or whatever, causing a tremendous increase of disease. So I would have to say I'm shooting towards chemicals as being a prime contributor, and how those chemicals, unfortunately, shift the microbiome. You put those two pieces together, you add in nutrient insufficiency, and what are we doing to our balance scale? What are we doing? All of a sudden, the nutrients, irritants, right? So all of a sudden, how can we stay balanced? I mean, we're going to be in a state of dis-ease. It's just natural.
It is. Well, I mean, what's interesting to me just really quick before we have to wrap up and go,
Yeah.
because I want to talk to you forever,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
dance, and then talk, and then dance.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
talk.
yeah.
Okay, but the question that I know if people are thinking right now as they're listening to this is, how, Summer and Tom, do you not feel like a hopeless sack of pile of puddle on the ground with all of this information? You know what I mean? Like that there's all of these chemicals everywhere and that our gut microbiomes are destroyed. How do you not walk around feeling completely hopeless and giving up on this?
Oh, totally easy. Because I've been there. I've been in a state of depression and sadness, and it hasn't felt good. So much like I do with the elimination diet, taking out foods that don't make me feel good, I do the same thing with my thoughts. So what I have found that makes me feel good and actually changes the future for my children is to be in a place of empowerment. What can I do? I can give myself lots of broad exposure to microbiome. I can talk to the fermentationist. I can go and I can eat lots of wonderful nourishing foods like broccoli sprouts, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all the things that will ramp up my detox and antioxidant capacities. So, you got to go to the place of power. That was then. All this has happened. Whether or not you choose to see it or not is up to you. But I would say by acknowledging it, embracing it, saying, we needed to do this. We had to go through this so we could see what works and what doesn't work. Through contrast, you find genius. So we know now what doesn't work. We know what's killing things in the planet and our minds and our kids. We know that. So now let's do the logical thing and move away from that into a place of sustainable gardening and forestry and making sure that we maintain clean air, food, water, soil, and microbiome. It just makes too much sense to ignore.
Awesome. Okay, so I want people to be able to go check out more about your book. So everyone, go check out The Elimination Diet by Tom Malterre. It's going to be so important for your healing library and for you to share this with other people in your life. And for all of the practitioners out there that are watching this, like this is an important skill set that you need to either learn within your own practice or start to refer people over to Tom to be doing this work. And Tom is going to be starting a program on teaching people online how to do the elimination diet. You can
coaching
coaching, right? You can find out more information about that here. So go check out this website and find more information. But tell us a little bit about what this program looks like, what you have right now.
It looks like me helping you out. It looks like me being concerned about you because I've seen thousands of people try this on their own. And it's tough for some people to go from square zero to hero. It's like you got to give them a little bit of advice and coaching. And so I give audio support MP3s. I get online with them actually in a live webinar. It's me. Summer, you know how busy I am. I've got the kids and I've got all the research I'm doing and everything. But I have to reach out. I have to help people. Because what I found is when they ask me questions, when they're in the middle of suffering, and I can give them those little clues, those little tips that actually help them, it helps hundreds of other people that are online as well. So I'm there. I talk to you. I say, look, prior to the program, here's what's going to help you to succeed. You're on day one. I know how you feel. This is what you're going to feel. This is what you're going to worry about. These are the things you're going to crave. Here's the recipe I recommend you eat instead, right, of falling off the horse. So we've got it all covered. I'm just there for you. I'm your support team. I'm your cheerleader, if you will. So I walk you through that, and then my wife gives you 24 cooking videos with all sorts of wonderful recipes. We give you color photos of the recipes. We give you an additional cookbook with all sorts of fun stuff when you sign up. So it's really fun. I mean, you'll have, I think, a great time, but more importantly, you can be one of those people like this gentleman I saw this morning who comes in half human and leaves whole again. That's what our whole business is about, whole life nutrition. We really want you to experience all of what life has to offer. So anything we can give you to get there, we're on it.
Awesome. Tom, thank you so much for being here. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
I hope to do this again sometime soon.
I'm sure we will, Summer. Such an honor. Thank you.
All right, everyone. This is Summer Bach and Tom Malterre signing out.